Welcome, racing fans. Normally, this is the ultimate showdown of speed and endurance, the third jewel of the Triple Crown, the Belmont Stakes weekend, but it is, of course, being run at a mile and a quarter this weekend instead of the Test of Champions at a mile and a half because of the move to Saratoga while Belmont's being rebuilt. But still lots of excitement and great racing throughout the entire weekend. So welcome here to our co-host for the evening, Mike Saletta.
Good
Mike, how are you
evening,
doing?
Oldie. Good to see you, buddy.
And our guest for the evening for a little while here, Alfredo from Video Hippica
Hey,
and
Oldy.
frequent
Hi, everyone.
Alfredo.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. We're going to kick it right off with the Grade 2 Bed of Roses Stakes in Race 6 tomorrow at Saratoga. I'm going to start the race. And there's several Grade 1 placed horses in this race. You see Irish Maxima, the pace square, gets the lead early here. And as we come for home, Ways and Means, the Chad Brown sprinter, who was in the Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Turf, takes over and carries on and edges out frequent rival Scalia. So the again, that is the picks there, 3-2-1 is the way the race sim sees it. But Alfredo, how about I have you kick it off? How do you see this race?
Well, what I remember from Ways and Means, she's going to be the heavy favorite. But if you check her campaign, obviously she's used to running this level. But when she has no control of the pace of the race, and in this race we have Irish Maxima, the number one, she struggles a bit to win the races when she's not controlling the pace. So she will chase, she will maybe, I believe she is going to chase down Irish Maxima. But I think that this situation of Ways and Means of chasing this Irish Maxima opens the door for Exila. So I believe Exila has a good chance to upset the favorite in this race. So that is the reason that I use her as my top pick.
So, Mike, what about you? Where were you here?
Yeah, so I saw it a little bit differently than Alfredo. Um, I believe that Irish Maxima should get an easy lead, and I don't see any other pace pressure that is significant enough. Now, granted, she's won on the lead pretty much every race, but she did rate back in September at Laurel Park. So the chances that she's had to rate, she did, and the other time she hasn't won here in recent memory was back at that 200K race at on November 25th. So just her consistent form, being on the lead with no really contentious pace pusher against her, I think she has a really good chance of going gate to wire, to be honest with you.
That's where I went as well with the Scotty Longshot Irish Maxima there on top and a little bit of an upset. Is first time in a grade 2, has raced in a grade 1 before. My concern on both Ways and Means and Scalia are, I just didn't like those last couple races, especially that last race out of either of them. And, Ways and Means I thought might be a wet track specialist because her best races had come on wet tracks. But, maybe second off the layoff, she's better here. But I just didn't like the form in those last two races for either of those horses. They're coming out of the same two races. So, though I did put Ways and Means in second, I thought Miss Justify had a little bit of a look for Pletcher with Dylan Davis aboard too. Granted, he's only raced in one grade 1. was in position in the stretch and backed up, so that might be a little concerning. But that was going 10 furlongs, and I think the shortened update and a half went well for her. And then she won at 6.5 last time out, first off the layoff. I like her second off the layoff to possibly be the horse that's right there if Irish Maxima stops, because I think she's a little faster early than Ways and Means. So I thought maybe Miss Justify had a long shot look here.
Yep, I would agree with you too, Oli. That's who I had as my third choice. Your analysis similar to mine. If someone that could sit off the pace, I felt that she had that opportunity. Now, granted, she hasn't. Besides the Alabama, this is kind of her toughest competition, so that's going to be the big challenge for her. She hasn't faced this kind of competition, so.
Well, and also in that Alabama, she was facing Torpedo Anna, I believe.
Yeah, pretty sure.
So,
last year.
Yeah. What about you, Alfredo? I think you were on the 4 here.
Yes, I like the two, but as I mentioned, and you talk about ways and means, has opportunity to be hitting the board, and I believe that race that you're thinking from is justified. Probably Jodi's Pride is going to do that race. Irad is riding these horses. As you checking her campaign, she was facing a similar competitive level than the number 2 and the number 3, and she's effective when she has pace in front of her. My doubt with Irish Maxima, because like you guys, I thought about that speed that she has, but I don't know. Most of her races are at par racing, Laurel and Delaware. She will try. She will try, but it's not the same to lead a race in 70, 72, 74 SOR level that here. That is the reason that I prefer I was inclined to use the SOR as a reference in this race.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think the things that considered, if it's an off track tomorrow, it might favor Ways and Means a bit, based on her races in the mud, but Irish Maxima does have a win in the mud too. But if you look at their wet GSR, Ways and Means does have a big advantage over the rest when it comes to an off track. Now, I don't know what the weather can change at Saratoga Springs. Like Mother Nature likes to do, change their mind pretty much around a regular basis, but it seems like it's extreme in Saratoga Springs. And usually I'm not saying all the time, it depends on the weather pattern, but me living in Western New York, a lot of times if it's straight west to east, they usually get what we get about 12 hours or so later. And it's supposed to be off and on rain, and I think that's what the forecast is saying too. So it's hard to tell whether we're going to have an off track or not tomorrow.
All right, let's move on to and I agree with you. I think it likely will be an off track. Let's move on to race 9, the grade 1 Ogden Phipps for 3-year-olds here. I'm sorry, 4 and up. And these are kind of a mix of horses that have been beaten up by Torpedo Anna and the horse that beat Torpedo Anna last time out. So I think we're all on the same horse. Mike, you want to take this one?
Yeah, so I happened to be at the soggy Churchill Downs that weekend. Oaks Day with Le Trion, watching Raging Sea with the upset victory. It was very impressive. So, just based off of visually seeing that performance firsthand, and then even her back class, she's got how many graded stakes wins, right? So, grade 1 at the Le Trion on Oaks Day. What's that? 2 grade 2s, another grade 1, 2 grade 3s, coming from off the pace. I could see a contentious pace. Randomize is probably going to be in the mix with Leslie's Rose. And that's why I see Raging Sea sitting another trip, and especially if you're going to see a little bit of an off track here as well. I like her form on and off track as well. So it's a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, I thought, and Alfredo, you might agree or disagree, but I thought this looked like a similar setup to the Torpedo Anna race in terms of the pace with randomized on the front end. And these other horses are going to be doing a lot of chasing, and I just don't think Candide's all that good. And that leaves me at Raging Sea.
Yes, Regine C. Her only defeat was against Torpedo Anna in the distaff. So
Yep.
imagine that. Now she defeated Torpedo Anna. I believe she's going to win. Maybe, as you see in her past performances, she suffers, she struggles, but she wins. So probably that is
Yeah.
happening. Randomize. Her stablemate is the enemy. And
Yeah. No.
Candia,
Go ahead. Sorry.
was alive last time out, but against a weaker group. So she could close. Probably complete the trifecta, but Chad Brown apparently has the 1-2 here.
Yeah, I agree. I think randomizes the speed of the speed too, and should be able to get away from Darth Vader. Leslie's Rose, I don't actually think is all that fast.
No.
And dazzling move as well. So, yeah, I don't think we need to spend that much time on this race. I thought it was 475. I think you guys,
We all had the
all
same.
three of us agreed.
Yes, consensus.
Yeah.
So let's go on to race time, the Grade 2 Belmont Gold Cup Stakes. This is a marathon, a 16 furlong race, which is one of the longer races run in the United States, 2 miles on the turf course. And the race sim will take a little while here. And there are a bunch of what I would call non-winners of most stakes races in this race that are just seem to be trying the distance to me, like Tawny Port, Grand Sonata, Ginger Wizard. So I went to the European horse here in Flatten the Curve, who at least has shown can get this kind of distance in Europe. And also, if the turf is wet, which it should be pretty wet by this point, it should benefit from that because the horse has wins over heavy, over yielding, and good ground in Europe. So I thought that Flatten the Curve might have a big look here. I know won a Grade 2. The SOR is a little low, but Scotty often says the SOR for the European races is not always as good as we would like.
Yeah.
So I landed there. The morning line doesn't like it. I'm just going to point that out as well. But I think that horse has a big look in a group that doesn't seem like it really wants to win all that much. What about you, Alfredo? Where did you end up here?
Well, I saw this European that has experience the distance that you're right is her leverage, but his leverage because he's a horse. I believe limited liability from the horses that are running in North America maybe is the best option because he has a victory running these long distances at Kentucky Downs. That is the track that is more like the European tracks here in the US. So I agree with Mike.
Yep.
I believe that is the horse to beat. Obviously, the number 1 is not a bad idea. And the thing is, the SOR is putting that horse under the number 3. And even Mike is using the 8. And I believe Mike is thinking the same like me, that we suspect that Grand Sonata could manage the distance. So if that happens, that is the main enemy of the number 3.
Yeah, spot on, Alfredo. And you were looking at the same thing at Kentucky Downs in that 16. So that 2.5 mile or 2 miles and a 16th is longer than this, right? So by a 16th of a mile. So the first thing I look for, right, is it's similar to what you guys is. Has anybody run even close to this distance? That's the first horse I'm going to look at, and then see how well they've ran, and then anything close to that. And then with limited liability, he also had a race here at Saratoga at 2 miles on the turf back
He
in
almost won.
June. Yeah, and came in third by 2/10
Mhm.
of a length. So again, I think just from experience and even on this track, that's why I landed on the 3, mainly because of that. And you mentioned the 8 Grand Sonata would be my second choice. And then Oldie, I did look at Flatten the Curve, and it was interesting. And again, it's tough with the non-US stats and things like that to look at. But from a distance standpoint, I can see where you would lean that way. And then with a soft turf, there's really no other horse in this race that's really ran on a soft turf. I think Ginger Wizard is one that ran on a yielding turf at mile and a half and did win, but that was against 54 SOR companies. So one was interesting. If I had a fourth pick, that would be it. And then the only other horse I considered was Tawnyport, but that was kind of I'd probably swap the 1 for Tawnyport in my numbers, just based off of, that distance experience the ones had.
Yeah, so I'm going to tell you guys, I think limited liability is a money burner, and I reflexively will toss any race at Kentucky Downs because it's so speed favoring that, for the horse was on the lead, got an easy lead, and just was able to run away. And I just don't see that happening here. And I just think it's going to burn money and finish second or third again. And I have the same feeling about Grand Sonata, who I do have in my third spot. But that led me to, well, you got to go with a long shot here then. And I ended up with my second pick on La Mahina, the French horse for Miguel Clement, who's now up to 15%, was at 8% at the start of the day today. I think will get the distance, has run decently at 11 furlongs against similar SOR. And, you look, has some wet track form too in France, going not quite as long, but still long.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the other horse who I thought had a little bit of a long shot look. Also puts Manny Franco aboard, who's a good turf rider.
Interesting. I didn't look at the 4 until just now, and you mentioned it.
Same here. Because I was remembering her from Goldstream,
Yeah.
and apparently she was struggling, but that all part of her campaign at Europe looks good at the distance. Maybe she's struggling because the 11 and 12 furlongs is too fast for her. Maybe.
Yeah. And maybe she wants the wet turf too. I mean,
Yeah, you
most
look
of
back.
her races are on firm turf since coming in the U.S.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And
She
you look
probably
at
wants it softer, or he wants it softer.
especially
Ground.
at this age at 6, may not want firm turf.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, Oldie. Very good point.
So, just a horse that I think could get overlooked. And we saw today in one of the turf races, you had a 40, I think 40 something to 1 shot win.
Yeah.
So, that does seem to happen at Saratoga.
Yeah, a lot of turf races these first 2 days have been prices for sure. Actually, I think a couple of my big wins the last couple of days have been turf races.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can see your point on both of those horses, no doubt about it. Still the point about Kentucky Downs and being a speed favorite, favoring track on a turf, I do get that, but I just think her form and class, outside maybe the 1 is tops though. Oh, be interesting. It's going to be a fun race because it's so long, and we don't get to see too many of those here in the States.
Yep.
So they're always fun to watch, at least for the last mile anyway.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right, on to race 11, the Acorn Stakes, the third race in the what I'll call the Philly Triple Crown, even though really
Mhm.
the Maryland race typically doesn't draw the winner of the Oaks. But we're all on the same winner here. Um, I think if you don't mind, I'll just take good
No, go
cheer
for
here.
it.
Um, and I think most importantly to me is Good Cheer has shown excellent form. Actually, best two races, really in my mind, have come on wet tracks, and I expect it to be wet by then. Um, and I just thought Good Cheer towers over this field based on what we've seen. I will qualify what we've seen at Saratoga so far. Is horses coming from as far back as Good Cheer tends to come from haven't been winning. So that's my one point of caution here, I guess, is the way I want to put it. But they'll probably have her closer because of that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Louis will figure that out pretty quickly. And even if you look at the second call and her performances, she's not extremely far back except for the Oaks, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of the furthest she's ever been back, and that's a totally different animal with 13 horses too in that
Well, and
race.
also
So
Lakar went so fast in that race
yeah,
that's what created that kind of separation.
yeah, and we've got what 7 contenders here before scratches. So I wouldn't think they're going to have her that far back, knowing the way the track's been running. And again, wet track could change everything tomorrow, right? So the speed may not be speed. It may even
Yeah.
exaggerate the speed bias, for that
But
matter.
I will say she's been excellent on wet track, so I'm not
Yeah,
all that
yeah,
worried about the wet track for her.
exactly.
Um, Alfredo, you want to go with your second horse here? Because I think
Yes,
that's an
because
interesting horse here.
I believe Good Cheer is too much class for this group, but I like this as Red than R because I saw her here at Gulfstream and she's extremely good. I don't know how good she is going to be at the end, but she has talent, has a speed, has a powerful pedigree also,
Mhm.
and the GSR reflects that. And I saw La Cara running here, and I know La Cara is not a bad filly, but she's not as good as you think. At Kineland, maybe she likes Kineland. That race surprised me a bit, that victory at Kineland, but
Yeah.
I believe here, I believe the number 4 will eat her. So, but Good Cheer is going to close strongly. So that is the reason you choose the 4 because I really believe she can do the jump. Obviously, Luis Saez is leaving her to ride Good Cheer for obvious reasons, but
Hmm.
obviously the number 4 is good enough to finish second. And I agree with Mike. The number 6 is good and will be around the pace, but not in the pace. And Rispoli will try to close.
So, Mike, I'll let you talk about the 6, and then I'll tell you why I don't like the 6 real fast.
Okay. So the reason why I like the 6, the only concern I have is the added distance, right? So she'll be stretching out to the 9 furlongs. So that's my only concern is the added distance. But looking at her pedigree and her GSR, she should be fine to handle the added distance. So that's my only question mark. The 8 bells that she ran on Oaks Day, I felt was a very nice race, and the way in which Umberto ran that race, just off the pace, and stalking or in a rating position, and then accelerated and won by a length and a quarter. So that I'm basing it off of that visual performance that I saw myself at that. Now, her previous races before that, National and the Honeybee, were very unimpressive, right? So I'm
Yeah.
just going off of recent form and visual, and I still think that she can get it and she can handle an off track as well. But there's better horses on an off track. That's why I went La Cara as my third choice, mainly because of that off track opportunity And I think if it's a wet track, I would put the 3 over the 6, though.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, look for it. I think it's just distance. I think the horse is a sprinter, regardless of what the GSR says.
Yeah.
The horse is undefeated going one turn, and undefeated going 2 turns. And 2 of the 2-turn efforts against top quality opponents were really bad. And as much as there might be excuses, they were bad starts, but they were bad starts at the distance. I just don't think Look Forward wants anything to do with going 2 turns. I ended up on Scottish Lassie, who had a really nice win in the Frisette at Aqueduct, and then didn't race until the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, and is second off the layoff here for Abreu. And I don't like the first off the layoff race. I don't like her on the lead. I like her rating where she was in the Frisette, and if she's sitting in that position, I think she could be one that surprises here, and at least finishes in the money. And if Good Cheer doesn't fire, could be the one that steals this race. She's working well. She's pretty much at home base. So I just think that this horse it doesn't really have a problem with didn't have a problem in the Juvenile Fillies against Immersive with the 2 turns, just wasn't good enough there, and may not be good enough here either, but we really don't know second off the layoff with her second race here. And I like the inside post here as well with the short run up.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. It gets IRAD back aboard.
Yeah.
They did run together back her first start, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting, Oldy. I can see your angle there, especially with that win, grade 1 win at Aqueduct. Yeah, I can see that angle.
And I will say I went with La Cara in third, but I still believe she's better rating than she is on the lead, and Cassie keeps putting her on the lead. And
yeah, she's an interesting horse. I mean, yeah, it's a good point. I mean, it's.
I didn't understand the strategy in the Oaks. If they go with the same strategy, she's not going to get the distance again. So
yeah.
Let's go to the Grade 1 New York Stakes, which this is going to be an all-day Matt Miller double here from Good Cheer to She Feels Pretty, and we're all in the same spot here. I took the last one. We were all in the same spot. So, Mike, how about you take this one?
Right. Yeah, She Feels Pretty. Definitely likes this longer distance. Last 3 wins, 2 grade 1s and a grade 3 for Cherie DeVoe and Johnny V aboard. Johnny, I think's won a couple turf races already, and I think on prices too as well. So now he gets a favorite and gets aboard. I really like her chances to repeat. I just don't see. The other thing is I'm looking at the rest of the competition, and she is heads above the rest of the competition, in my opinion. So forget just their past performances. It's just looking at the rest of the competition. I just don't see anybody else that, from a form can stay with her. There are a couple others, but I'll let you guys talk about those. I know Fredo and I are on the same, and I think Oldie, you like one of them, but yeah. I mean, there's not much more to say about She Feels Pretty.
Give me another, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So go ahead,
horse.
Alfredo. The 3 horse.
Yes, the 3 is very good, and she ran on good turf at Europe with very good results running. Well, at Europe not, because she's from South Africa.
Yep.
But she was running against tougher competition, was doing well. She likes that kind of turf, and in America, 2 second places. I'm giving her a fair opportunity to see if she can, run at this level. Apparently, she's able to do it. Let's see if with this turf that is going to be slower tomorrow, she could close. I don't know if she will be good enough to defeat She Feels Pretty, but I believe it's an upset possibility.
I definitely think it has a good chance to hit the board. Mike, did you have anything to add on Give Me Another?
No, I mean if you're gonna pick anybody else that could upset She Feels Pretty, which I don't think will happen, it's the obvious horse. Looking at it's non-U.S. stakes wins and such have been very impressive, and coming over here, they obviously think they have a really good chance of winning this race, and I wouldn't disagree that they think so. And Jose's another one that's done well on the turf here at Saratoga already in a couple days, so it could she upset She Feels Pretty? Anything's happening in these turf races at Saratoga, so sure. She definitely has a chance just based on her past performances alone.
Yeah, so I've really struggled between Give Me Another and Beach Bomb, the two South African horses. There were two things that separated Beach Bomb for me from Give Me Another. Beach Bomb has some tactical speed in a race that does not have a lot of speed, and also Give Me Another, in my mind, may be more of a miler. And I know there's the 1800 meters, which is about 9 furlongs there, but running 9 in the U.S. seems to have maybe been too long for Give Me Another, where Beach Bomb's shortening up here, and I like the shorten up to 9 furlongs here for Graham Motion, and I thought Beach Bomb had a chance to be on the lead here, even though Edict is the top pace number. Um, class wise is not in the same class as She Feels Pretty. But if Beach Bomb's already shown the ability, if she gets away on the front end, that she can steal a race. So I thought it was at least a possibility. And the price was a little better at 10-1 as well. But I was the E picks and the going first pick, long shot, second pick here.
Yes, the number one, Aldi, was facing a weaker group at Kineland, but that day the turf was yielding, and she won so easily. She loved that track that day. She was like breezing. It was doing nothing over her, and she won by 9. Obviously, it was a weak group, but the commentary is that she loves the yielding track, and that is repeating. So
that's a good point.
Maybe if the turf is very but very slow and heavy, she has a chance.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I could definitely see that as well. That's definitely one. If I play a ticket that's not single to She Feels Pretty there, I would definitely include the 1 with the 3 and the 7 there.
Yep, for sure. I would agree.
All right, on to the grade 1 just a game stakes, going a mile. I thought this field was not very good. I'm just going to say it at the beginning here. The best miler in America got sold and is being shipped over to Europe. So, in Carl Spackler, I would have assumed Carl Spackler would have been in this race.
Yeah.
We all landed in the same spot here again. I guess, Alfredo, you want this one?
Well, Cheswa is a French name. She's coming from 3 in a row, 2 at Maiden, and then in her debut in the US in a grade 1, she won again. So according to the SOR, she's dropping class in this
Yep.
race. Despite this one is a great one also, but ignoring that, she's very good. And she likes fast tracks and good tracks, so she looks very versatile. And the pace scenario helps her, in my opinion, because the number 6, in my opinion, is overmatched here, but she will try to take the lead, and that is going to be an issue for the 5. So the number 9 has a good chance to close in this race. Also, well, with the three of us, we are on the number 9.
Yep.
I imagine Mike is the number 4 because you put 8 there. Mike is 943, right?
I am,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, you're right. Sorry,
Okay.
that's my bad.
Because Simply in front has a very good GSR, and I think Mike is considering that she will close.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Is that of the closers with the high GSR, and again, not understanding what the track's going to be, and her wet GSR is pretty good too, considering. I didn't have a chance to compare her to the rest of the field as far as a wet GSR, but it's decent enough to where I'm not concerned if it's an off track, and did win on 2 good turf courses.
Mhm.
And then her recent win was at Churchill Downs on a good turf at a mile, and that distaff turf mile on Derby Day against 76 Company, same as today, coming from off the pace at like 4.5 lengths at the second call, and finishing strong and winning by a nose basically. So I'm again basing it off of recency, and her training has been really nice since then too. So that's who I landed on as my second choice. It's Simply in front, based on her of the closers. I felt she was the best.
So I landed in a completely different spot. I went with Tactical Speed here and Lilac Rolla, who first time in the country for Bill Mott here. Been off for 8 months, no, more like 10 months here, but was running in in a high level grade 1 last time out in Europe. Has wet track form, likes it wetter, wet to good, I would say, heavy to good there. Um, and Mott's pretty good uh, on the first race with Horse Move. That this was one I thought, other than Choisa, who I had a note on, was much the best and had a hat pace to run into there as well. But I liked a little bit of Tactical Speed from a Lilac Rolla. And then it looks like, Mike, you and I are on the same third horse, and Alfredo, you're on Kehoe Beach, the 5 here.
Yes, because obviously the number 6 maybe will try to bother her at the beginning,
Yes.
but she's overmatched in this race. She was running very good at Gorson, but that was allowing races. This one is a great one. So I think Kihoy will be taking the lead before the final stretch, and then we'll have the visit of the number 9. The 4 will be coming. You mentioned the 7 that I didn't realize has a very good chance to run very well because her European races are very good. So the final stretch is promising in this race. I
Yeah,
believe uh, the number 9 could win the race, but there is a clear upset possibility in this race.
for sure. And I also think, and Mike, you had this horse as well, that
Augusta.
suggests on the cutback it could be interesting too. I think I'm imagining this horse doesn't have enough speed to get the lead, but I've been beaten on this turf course a bunch of times by horses I ignored that would be sitting, just and pressing on this turf course and just take over when the speed stops there. So,
Yeah,
suggested to me that that's her ideal run here. I think she gets a little lost on the lead when she's on the lead. So, but she just may not be good enough, and that might be, where this ends up, because it's she was ran in an 80, but she hasn't shown much outside that Grade 1 Belmont Oaks, going much longer.
Yeah, and I'm similar thoughts on her as well, Oldie. Again, I'm probably more a little recency bias in why I was leaning on this 3 a bit. And if I'm gonna pick the horses I was picking were one's close, very close to the pace, one mid pack with Choice, and then the closer and Simply in front. But with Suggesta, she definitely sits very, very close to the pace. And the thing is, she's cutting back, and I've seen it today. I think that big shot in the fourth race today was one of those situations where it was cutting back. And then again, Jose is, I don't know what's gotten into him lately, and especially on these turf courses, but he's become an excellent turf rider. So that's the other angle I had, is just being in awe of what Jose's been doing lately. He's starting to creep up on my top jockey list. He's always been up there, but he's going to take a little bit more to unseat Flavian. But Jose's up there, man. He's riding really, really well. And put him on a Chad Brown horse on the turf at a price that close to the pace. I don't know. I mean, maybe she's not good enough to win, but good enough for me to put some money on at that price.
So, Alfredo, tell me about your closer, the 8 horse here.
I'm sorry, did I get you?
Tell me about your closer, the 8 horse here.
The 8 horse. Because I didn't talk about that one. Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent Truth. Let me put it here. Oh, this mare was running very well lately and finished second behind the number 9 in the last one. And I believe, as I said before, that this initial speed with the 5 and 6 will allow the number 9 to close. But if I'm using the number 9, I need to use the number 8 because they finished together in the last race.
Logical.
So Chad Brown has explained very well, Mike. Flavien Prat is right in the number 8. So if you're using Suggesta, I believe Excellent Truth, that, by the way, has a high SOR for the race. The only concern is the GSR, but she was running very well at this distance at Europe. She's a bit irregular. That is the weak part, you can say that. But if Flavien Prat is insisting, so he thinks she could win the race. So,
all right. Appreciate that. And Alfredo, I know you have to get going, but you wanted to talk about your Belmont pick or picks before.
Yes, I was seeing the file. I am amazed that you don't have it. Why? It's more interesting for me to listen to you than to give you my opinion.
I am going to save it till that point in the show, but I'll just say I don't believe Sovereignty is going to finish in the money. I don't believe the pace exists here that he had incredible pace to run into in the Derby, and I don't think that pace exists here. And we've seen how we saw it last year, and we've seen so far at this meet how difficult it is to close at this distance.
Well, with all the respect, that you know that I love you, Oldy.
I told you were going to call me crazy at some point.
I will tell you this because I read a very polemic handicapper from the Big Apple saying that he was criticizing Godolphin because they didn't put East Avenue in this race, to create some pace in the race.
Yep.
So an additional pace because you will have pace with Rodriguez here. I will tell you, Soberty doesn't need that pace to win the race. Believe me.
Well,
This
and
horse
I
is
would argue with you that Sovereignty does, because that's what happened in the Florida Derby, was that pace wasn't
no,
there.
no, no. In the
Yes,
Florida
that was
Derby,
a slow,
remember,
that
no,
was
no,
a
no, no,
slow
no, no,
pace. I was,
no, no,
we
no,
were
no,
both live broadcasting
no,
that.
no, no, no,
It
no,
was
no,
a slow pace.
no, 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 no. First of all, he was in the 10 post,
Yeah,
and
yes, I mean that's true. But
that post is horrible. The only two horses that has won a race, in one was in the Pegasus, was Gun Runner, and the other one was Forte. And Forte won that Florida Derby because Mage had a horrible start that day. Because if Mage broke well, he was winning the race.
But Alfredo, Sovereignty's not even in the Derby if they didn't add the run up, because he doesn't win the Fountain of Youth without the extra run up.
No,
And
but you know, Soberty the day
Don't matter.
before the race, no, that is an anecdote.
it's a fact.
I'm going to say
he won by about 2 inches and got an extra
no, but
300 feet or so.
the advantage that he was giving was bigger than that. Believe me, that horse was not ready to win that race. That horse was lucky enough 60% of his condition for that race. And I was talking to someone that I'm not going to mention. And after the race, I talked to someone that I'm not going to mention also. And they were amazed that that horse won that day. And that is the reason that he struggled to be closer earlier in the race, because he was not sharp enough. But he was so good, and the pace was relatively slow that day, that he won the race. And if you checked his victory at Churchill Downs, his first victory, and he rallied earlier. He doesn't need pace. This horse is extremely good. That is the reason that they bypassed the Preakness. And now it's going to be a nightmare in this race, this horse. So obviously Journalism is the horse that has the ability, because if we talk about the past, maybe a Fern or an Alidar, they were champions at their time. And they were facing each other, and sometimes, well, a Fern won most of the races, but Alidar was a champion as well. So I can tell you, Journalism for sure is a champion, but Sovereignty is extremely good.
Okay, when Sovereignty doesn't finish in the money, I'll send you a text.
Let me tell you something. Journalism could be in trouble in this race to finish second, because Baeza is a very good horse.
Journalism's 2-0 against Baeza would be what I would say there. I mean, this is probably more interesting than going back and doing this in order.
Well,
but
I will let you talk, guys. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, buddy.
Let me tell you,
Alfredo, it's always fun to argue.
What I say to the people that is watching this, you can bet on Sovereignty with the trust that the horse is going to deliver. That is what I'm going to say. Good luck, and thank you for having me, Oldy, and good luck also, Mike.
Good to see you, Alfredo. Good luck, buddy.
Thank you.
Take care. It'll be interesting because we'll have further discussions about that.
It's always more fun when you have to have further discussions about it, though. All right, here we are on the Inner Turf, Grade 2 Wonder Again Stakes, Race 6 on Saturday. Turf's going to be wet, most likely. Hopefully we stay on. You want to kick this off with your first pick here?
Yeah, I was debating, man. I didn't like this race, to be quite honest with you. I looked at it. There's 3 to 4 horses that I think could have a chance here. And I went with Nitrogen on top. I know it's chalky. With these turf races, I'm trying to not bet chalk, especially what I've been seeing. But with that being said, it's hard to look away from Mark Cassie and Jose with 4 straight wins.
Mm-hmm.
2 of them grade 2s, Florida Oaks grade 3, run pretty much from a stalking position. I can see some pace up front, but with Opulent Restraint, which is the other horse I thought about. We'll talk about um, her in a second here, but I think that's who you have on top. So that's who I was going back and forth with. Nitrogen, the reason why I leaned more on Nitrogen, mainly probably because of the potential for the off track. To be quite honest with you, I think Opulent Restraint could easily take these gals gate to wire though. Oldie.
Yeah, so that was my angle here, and I've been successful in especially in the late sequences at Saratoga the first 2 days, singling lone pace horses on the turf.
Yeah.
And like the 8 today,
Yep.
the 9 yesterday, and I think this profile similarly. I mean, this is a horse that doesn't actually need the lead, but there's no other pace here at all.
Mm-hmm.
And as the turf is wetter, it's harder to catch those horses too, because it's harder to
True.
get traction. Granted, in the last race at Aqueduct was on wet turf, ran pretty well, but got caught. And Nitrogen is definitely a classier horse and on a much different track. If we were at Keeneland or Churchill,
Yeah.
it would be no doubt in my mind that Nitrogen's going to win. Nitrogen does have some speed too. Did show speed going a mile as a 2-year-old, but um, I think Opulent Restraint has a big chance to steal this race on the front
Mm-hmm.
end. Um, I really think it's, even though I used Mayday Ready, I really thought that it's a 2-horse race. Mayday Ready, those last 2 races, I really don't like, and really needs to close and needs pace to close into. Who was my third pick? So
Yeah.
I really thought it came down to Nitrogen or Opulent Restraint. Do you want to talk about your third pick though?
Yeah, El Jafara. The question is the last win was from way back, right? Seven lengths back at the
Yeah,
second column coming in. You can't really see the lines from their out of the U.S. starts there, but on the 16th against 50, it's a 32K maiden special weight race. Uh, so you really can't say too much from
yeah,
that. But the reason why I was liking was the progression, right? And then winning the first race here in the States on a good turf for Chad Brown gets Flavian Pratt, my favorite rider, aboard. It was hard for me to ignore. The question mark is I just don't know enough about the horse to say she has a chance to win, but I like her chances to at least hit the board and never know, maybe could upset. You're looking at the EE morning line angle at 7-2 versus a
yeah.
6-1 morning line, and I think they probably just don't know what to do with that horse either, and putting her at 6-1. Does have a win at the same distance, right? At 8.5. So it's a connection thing for me, and that win on a good turf in her first start in the U.S. is why I landed on her as my third choice.
Excellent. All right, on to the Grade 3 True North Stakes, which features a bunch of sprinters that we've been watching for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Um, here I landed on the one Concrete Glory. I was really torn in this race,
Mm-hmm.
but
Me too.
I thought that Safi has a habit of winning, and these are the kind of races Safi finds a way to win one of and to steal on a big day. And you can throw out the Maryland Sprint because the horse didn't really leave the gate, but was prepared to run that day. I think has a pretty big pace advantage. You know, the 6 Mulligan is the other one who I think has some early pace. But if Concrete Glory can get away, stranger things to have happened than Safi stealing a race like this on the front end.
Yeah, that's the first angle I looked at is that's such a huge pace advantage. And Louis on board does help as well. He does hop off a Mulligan. I don't know if
Yeah.
that was by choice or I would think so, right?
Well, no, Pratt was aboard Mulligan until that race at Churchill.
Oh,
He was
yeah,
hopping back on
that could be. Yeah. Yeah, that could be.
because
So he didn't
Pratt's
have a chance.
usually first call for Brissett.
Yeah. That makes sense. Um, I was lost in this race, to be quite honest with you. Why I landed on Bookham Dano, I think mainly because of the off track, and granted, the
Mhm.
Churchill Downs Grade 1 on Derby Day was in the slop and finished fourth, but it was a close race. I think that was the race you throw a hat on the finishers, right? The top four. But I just think that the back class, and I know he has been kind of hit or miss. He had a poor race back in October. I even had a note on that race as, such a bad trip. And I wanted to bet him back the last race and just didn't come to form, and
Yeah.
then went off the layoff and came back and won at Colonial against 76 group. And I just think with that race underneath him at Churchill Downs, um, been training fine. That's kind of why I landed on Bookham Dano. Honestly, I didn't really have a honest opinion about anyone in this race. Nobody was jumping out at me.
I mean, I definitely think it's a wide open race. Um, for me, Mulligan was the second pick, but hasn't really run well
Hmm.
the last 3 races. But I think second off the layoff potentially, and could get a nice stalking trip, if Mulligan doesn't go too hard early. That Mulligan is logical here, as is Bookham Dano. Those are where I went underneath Concrete Glory there. I just didn't think there was enough pace here for the 3 closers, the 4, 8, and the 2.
Yeah, the other horse I was looking at too, Oldie, I think I have it in second, is Surveillance. And I think the reason I was looking at that is the win on the slot at Aqueduct,
Yeah.
two back against 72 SOR. Led the whole way, was the favorite, more or the post time favorite too, at 6 furlongs. Now stretching back out to adding a 16th of a mile, but based off of that sloppy win, that's the one reason I was looking at uh, at him to possibly upset at a nice price.
I mean, I could definitely see that's possible. Linda might have her checkbook out too, so
And I always take a good look at Constitution
yeah.
ponies too. So
All right. On to the Grade 1 Hill and Dale Metropolitan Handicap, also known as the Met Mile. Um, this
yeah,
was the reason I actually looked up those numbers on the
oh the
uh,
Wilson shoot,
Wilson shoot. Yeah,
yeah,
and you know, uh, you and I, there's 2 logical horses here, and you and I went oppo on them. They're 2 of my favorite horses too, in White Barrio and Fierceness. I went White Barrio on top. Um, I just think has a little more ability to be more consistent and tactical, and I think both of their best efforts are better than everybody else in this
Oh yeah,
race. And, that I just, it was kind of a coin flip between the two for me.
me
They
too.
both have the two preferred inside posts as well coming out of the Wilson chute that win, 50% of the races there. Um, but, I also thought Fierceness might be maybe is due for a timidness to show up instead of fierceness as well, and might bounce a little off of that record-setting race in the Alishiba. So those were all the reasons I landed on White Barrio. What about you? Why did you land on fierceness there as your top pick?
It was pretty simple, and that is 3 wins at Saratoga. Um, his 2-year-old debut in a muddy track, right? And then
Yep.
more recently, July of last year in the Jim Dandy, and then followed that up with another win in the Travers, right?
Yep.
The Alishiba, yep, great. Won Oaks Day, looked fantastic. That just solidified how good of a horse he really is.
Hmm.
And that was that. Honestly, that's what separated is all those wins at Saratoga. And it doesn't mean that White Barrio hasn't won at Saratoga, which he has with the Breeders' Cup Classic and the Whitney. So he's kind of hard to say. Well, he won the Breeders' Cup Classic, or that was at Santa Anita.
Yeah.
The Whitney at Saratoga, right? Um, and then the Met last year came in 5th. So it was just matter of Fierceness having better results at Saratoga and more trips at Saratoga does help, right? But that's
Yeah.
kind of what separated the two for him. I know Housebuster had said Just a Touch can't lose. Believe me, I was a huge Just a Touch fan. I was big on that horse. I so wanted that horse to do well in the Derby last year, and boy, oh my, that was horrible.
Uh,
And it just hasn't done, kind of digressed, right? Since
yeah.
then, really hasn't done much since then. Now won what a 53K allowance race and an 80K optional claimer. So I don't know. I
And,
can't see him beating White Barrio in fierceness.
and so I have a note on this horse from its maiden breaking win where I had it likely to hit the Derby Trail. That's a decent note since it did actually hit the Derby Trail. But
It did.
um, I just thought, I was not a huge fan of Just a Touch, who I think was a little bit used as a rabbit
Hmm.
in the Derby year. Um, I think if they thought this horse was a Grade 1 horse, it wouldn't have been running in conditioned allowance coming off the break there from 3 to 4. And, I just don't think this horse is good enough here. And for me, I thought that the third best horse here is Raging Torrent.
Yeah, if it was a 7 furlong race.
Yeah, but did win at a mile in Maidan,
Yeah.
and it's coming back from that. But I think Raging Torrent at least has a shot here. I'm encouraged by the fact Raging Torrent's in this race and not um, in the True North
Hmm.
as well. But I think has a little bit of a long shot look, but I don't think is as good as White Barrio or Fierceness.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with you. Yeah, Raging Torrent was one that I'm super high on. I love that horse. If it was 7 furlongs, it would be a
Yeah,
no-brainer. But I mean, and then plus the outside post in that
right.
Wilson chute's not ideal for his liking, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have to probably use a lot of speed to make sure he gets
Yeah,
the lead. And you could see a pace duel between Just a Touch and Raging Torrent there as well.
you could. Yep, good point.
All right. The Grade 1, I always screw this one up. Chaparral Sure, I'm
Yeah,
going with that.
per.
Stakes. I'm not falling for Coppola here. Again, not going to do it. I keep telling myself, no, you're not going to do it. Where did you end up here? Please tell me you didn't end up on Coppola.
No, I did have him second, only because of the price. That's the only reason why I probably had him in second. But no, I landed on Think Big. I think that's the same horse you're on too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to talk about Think Big, but
I mean, just seems a cut above here that this group has faced a lot of these recently, other than AG Bullet and My Boy Prince, really like, you know, had beaten Coppola twice, has beaten Arzak,
yeah,
just I just thought was better than everybody in this race and
I
really,
agree.
form wise. I just think sits a great trip and it is better here. And I expect Coppola to stop again. And
I expected.
um, Ag Bullet needs, AG Bullet, whatever you want to say, needs the lead from everything we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an auto toss for me. And so that's how I ended up on Think Big. I mean, there just was, I wanted to try to beat him, but there was nowhere to go.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. I don't. It's kind of a one process of elimination to a certain degree, but when you look at who he's beat, which is quite a few in this race, right?
Yeah.
That's a good indicator, and then secondly, the last two races were pretty darn good. So, um, AG Bullet. I'm a big Twirling Candy fan, and I'm also a big Into Mischief fan. So it's hard when there's, I think, four of them, two Twirling Candies, and I think there's one or
Mhm.
two Into Mischief horses in here. Yeah, one Coppola. And that's probably the other reason why I picked Coppola second was the Into Mischief
Yeah.
Colt. But um, I struggled after that, to be quite honest with you, when I fell on Coppola, and Arzak was the other choice I think I had coming
Yeah.
off of it really second off a layoff. I don't really consider the April layoff line there, but had a nice bullet
Yeah.
work last out for Trombetta. Get and then Irad rides again. Last race has been beaten favorites the last two races. In the Shakertown got beat by our top choice, right? So
Yep.
I think it's just a bad outing, and just get him back into shape for this race. May hit the board. He's not going to beat Think Big.
Yeah. The other place I went with my second pick, we both had Arzak in third,
Irad.
but Allegan, the 8 horse here,
Oh yeah, I looked at that 8. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it does have a win in a 72 SOR at 6 furlongs. And first off the layoff, almost won it at 74 SOR. Second off the layoff, gets Jose here on the turf. This was the other one that hasn't really faced this group, and I thought might be able to surprise,
Yeah. Yep.
but didn't do much last year in this race. Granted, this race had a pretty big favorite in it last year, if I remember correctly. In the seemingly unbeatable until the Breeders' Cup Asmussen horse, whose name I'm drawing a blank on. But
I can't think of it. Who you're
uh,
talking about?
all right, on to the uh, Panin Ridge Stakes, Grade 3. This is my best bet of the day
Nice. I think we're on the same
in
horse.
the one Zulu Kingdom,
Yeah.
who won the American Turf last time out. There's just nothing in this race. Um, you look, Mio Baggio was soundly beaten by well, not soundly, but was beaten by Zulu Kingdom last time out. Um, the second pick states' rights isn't beating 64s. I just can't see a scenario where this horse is going to win a grade 3. So, there just wasn't a place for me to go other than that. And, I just think Zulu Kingdom, second off the layoff or third off the layoff here, is just a cut above this group.
Yeah, I agree. Not much more to add to that. I think it is the single, probably best bet of the day. I'm not going to get great value out of the bet, but you could make money still out of it, into or out of that race, or single it in any horizontal, longer than probably a pick 3. But the other horse I was looking at, Oldie, I think was the 7, right? Me Bago, the
Yeah,
Marquesi with Irad. I think you mentioned it too. The only question with Me Bago um, is he looks like a need to lead horse, and the last 2 races did not fare
yeah,
well on the lead. Matter of fact, in that Transylvania in the grade 3, just weakened, and I don't know if it was. I didn't look at that race of what exactly happened. It just tired or what, but the last 2 races were what kind of deterred me away from
yeah,
Mibago to have any kind of chance. Is those last 2 efforts. It's hard to kind of back somebody if they're having 2 efforts like that. Now, granted, facing better competition, and then the 3 races before that, were facing similar company to this and did go gate to wire,
yeah,
but gonna face other speed too. So
for sure. And they went really fast that day at Keeneland.
mhm.
Um, I probably would upgrade this horse if this was a dry track,
Yeah, it's true because that was the other part. Yeah, off
because
track, and those both didn't take to it too well.
right.
That could
I mean,
probably be
so
it.
that for me was,
Yeah,
a factor in my handicapping.
yeah, for
Um,
sure.
it, and so I had that horse in third. I actually went to Tom's Magic, the 5, who's a pretty big long shot here for Michael Stidham. I'm throwing out the last in the Transylvania. And again, this could be also didn't like
Uh,
the wet turf, but there is something in the trouble line, um, where the horse was bumped and then steadied at the start. So it had 2 issues at the start. So broke 11th instead of, and was just completely in a position the horse isn't used to.
yeah,
So I thought that, I don't think this horse is going to win, but I do think this horse could be an interesting one to use in the try or exacta with Zulu Kingdom.
yeah. It's interesting. I was struggling to find underneath horses, to be quite honest with you, because I was also looking at Noble Confessor and Flying Mohawk both. Only concern is with just like a bunch of these horses are coming off Lasix. Mohawk is cutting back. I think that was the
Mhm.
one angle that I liked, is that cutback. And last race was on the turf, so it ran in the Derby, but he's a synthetic horse for the most part. But the turf pedigree's not too bad either. So that
Right.
was the horse that I was thinking about as possible underneath horse for Whit Beckman. Gets to Tory aboard. Um, and again, I think it's more of a what kind of pace is he going to have to run into as well, and
Yeah.
he may get it. So that's one who I think I would probably include. And then Noble Confessor, the questions I have with that horse is more of a consistency problem. It's not. It doesn't seem like it wants to do anything past half a mile or so. It just seems to
Uh,
be dead.
well, the best race did come on yielding turf. So that to support you on that might
Yeah,
be, maybe this horse wants wet turf and hasn't liked the firm turf
yeah,
and
that
will
could
run
be.
back to that pilgrim form.
Yeah, that could be. But When I was looking at it, what I was trying to find was the fact that it had a huge price, and then has Dylan aboard. Dylan, I think's won 2 turf races too, and one of them on a price horse as well. So that was kind of only reason why I looked. I think, like you said, yielding second place finish, but Flying Mohawk would probably be the other horse I would include here, Oldie, that I didn't have listed.
Okay. Okay. And then on to the Woody Stevens, and I thought this was a very interesting race with a lot
Mm-hmm.
of Derby Trail horses here, including my old friend Citizen Bull.
Yeah, you're in mine too.
But where did you land here? I didn't have your entry here.
Oh yeah, I threw him in late. I didn't get to the last 3, so as a matter of fact, I don't even have the Derby or the Belmont yet, but we can talk to that one. I'll throw them in later. Yeah, so this is very, very interesting. I don't know, man. So let's just go with how I went through this, because I know a lot of these horses, because half of them were on the Derby Trail, right? Mattakit Road, probably wants shorter, probably more of a sprinter. To me, I don't even think he wants 7 furlongs. I don't think he wants 8 furlongs. A horse that I have not been on since day one. So I tossed him. Citizen Bull screwed me in the Derby. I has alive to a double, a big double in
Me
the
too.
Kentucky Derby betting challenge. Probably would have put me in about 5th or 6th place. So I have a little bad taste in my mouth. I did not appreciate his right hand turn out of the gate. So more bad taste in my mouth. So I left Citizen Bull off of my ticket, probably for those reasons, right?
Mhm.
And then I'll go a little bit quicker here. Where I landed, and I think again, just process of elimination, more so was Macho Music, who won the Pat Day Mile at Churchill Downs on a sloppy track, went gate to wire, cutting back. Is he going to face other speed in here? Sure. Are they as fast as him? Maybe. Citizen Bull might be as fast as him, but I'm so mad at that horse. I don't even want to consider him even getting out of the gate. If he takes another right hand turn, take another right hand turn. I don't care. So I'm just basing it off of that recency, the at the Pat Day Mile, going gate to wire on a sloppy track. Seems to be, I mean, his works aren't great. I was looking back at his works. He doesn't seem like he's a stellar workhorse at 5 furlongs. He just kind of does his duty for the most part. So I didn't really care about the works too much. That didn't a factor in any negative towards it. So I was looking at that, and with the big pace advantage of 20 points above Citizen Bull, and no changes. Right, there's no changes on this horse. It's Javier. That's who I landed on for all those reasons.
Okay. I went somewhere that I never thought I would go,
I was
and
surprised when I saw your pick.
this is just purely based off the pace scenario. By the way, the 7 scratched, and I just look at this and it looks to me like it's going to set up for Chancer McPatrick, who David and Harrison and I have been saying is a 1-turn horse.
Yep.
And they're finally getting the horse back to 1 turn where it belongs. In the Champagne and the Hopeful, it got these huge pace setups. In the Bluegrass, the Tampa Derby, and the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, it didn't.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm seeing here is that pace setup that Chancer needs. So I'm gonna take the chance because Matacute Road is going.
Yeah.
Neo Aquos is going.
Yeah.
Gunmetal, I don't know if Gunmetal's fast enough, but Gunmetal's likely going. Um, and so Citizen Bull, though, from what I hear, they're going blinkers off
Yeah.
and they're going to rate the horse. And
Forget it.
the works show that the horse can use a target and can rate. This is what they were going to do in the Derby and how they were training. And then he drew the one post and they had to put the blinkers back on. But blinkers off is an old Bob Baffert angle that Scotty could talk about if he was here. You know, he used to have insane numbers when he would
Yeah.
go blinkers off. And I'm trying not to talk you onto the horse, but you know,
You are.
I don't know if he'll sit far enough back, but if he does, you know, I think it's going to come down to him and Chancer.
Yeah.
And I think Gate to Wire is a cut below the three of them. I just didn't have a third place to go here.
Yeah. I mean, I had Chancer as my second pick and probably could be easily tossed onto the as my top pick. I was on him early on as a 2-year-old.
Yeah,
One of my early Derby picks in the early pools, but um, I agree with you. I mean, he could sit the trip, and that pace could melt. And Macho Music, my top pick, could drop anchor, and because he's going to be pressed. But so yeah, easily, Chancellor Patrick has probably the top chance from a stalking position. I just man, I will let the Citizen Bull beat me. Yes, I do have bad taste in my mouth. You and I've talked about this before. We were talking about Derby, and they were trying to get him to rate in the Oaks, right, and then
in the
um,
Santa Anita
Santa
Derby.
Anita Derby. I mean,
But they
and
left the blinkers on, and
yeah,
that Bob said
so
that
maybe the blinkers off angle is the right angle. I am I gonna bet him? Probably not. Just because he burnt me so bad, and I was touting him and all this other crap, and it's not because I want to see him do bad, but I just can't see. I just can't back him, right?
yeah,
So the other horse I was looking at, I think, yeah, Dar mentioned it, is Patch Adams. Um, there's another horse that I was high on, and I think you were too, Oldie,
yeah,
weren't
I
you
was,
early
yeah,
on? Yeah. Um, disappointing Tampa Bay Derby, and then decided not to pursue much more after that, and then came back and ran on Derby Day in the slop and won an allowance optional claimer. And again, it's visual for me being there, and I'm saying
yeah.
finally you're back. Maybe you've got a chance to come back and improve off of that effort here. Do I think he's going to win? I don't know. I don't know if he's good enough, to be quite honest with you. Not yet. I think he'll be better as he gets older. And then the 7 furlongs is a question too. He did win at Churchill Downs um, back in November. So that's the
Well,
horse that I think, if I'm going to pick somebody other than Chancer McPatrick or even Macho Music, where I think you might take him gate to wire, but um, Patch Adams is the one I was hoping could keep his progression going.
and Patch Adams has been been the favorite in every race he's ever been in.
Yeah, that's a good point. I just noticed that.
But you know, because he also raced at Oaklawn, you know, there was no visible excuse that day in the Southwest, and it just may be distance
Yeah,
again with him.
same.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but I just think that he might be more of an Iowa Derby or a West Virginia Derby type horse
hmm Yeah, makes
than
sense.
he is a Grade One sprinter.
Yeah, he probably is better at a mile and a eighth mile. Yeah, probably maybe a little bit longer
Yeah.
as well, and definitely not in this class. I would agree with you.
All right, on to race 12, the Resorts World Casino Manhattan Stakes. And
Yeah.
I thought this race was pretty wide open.
Yeah, there's a horse that I've been on for a while, and I was hoping to see him on Derby Day, and he didn't run. Um, and it was the turf race before the Derby. I was expecting to see him.
Was that integration by any chance?
It was not. It was Farbridge.
Farbridge, okay.
Yeah. So that's who I landed on. I've just loved this horse. It's been a top watch horse for me. Been in my virtual stable for quite a while. And the recent form obviously likes a longer distance, right? One
Yeah,
at 11, a mile and a half, and does cut back. Again, that's the cutback angle here with me. Maybe wants longer. And then to cheer for Miguel, I want Miguel to get another win. And he's got some chances this weekend too. I think he's
yeah,
got some great chances. Again, Farbridge, English Channel, turf horse. Love English Channel turf horses. So I landed on Farbridge mainly because of my love for this horse for such a long time. Granted, cutting back. So that's the question mark. Maybe he prefers longer, right?
yeah. So, and I landed on the other Miguel Clement because, when there's two Miguel Clements, you go with the second one. In deterministic because I wanted to be on the lead in this race. And I thought deterministic has a chance to be on the lead. Here, did win in an 82 SOR, which is what this race is. Last time out at Belmont going 9. I think shouldn't have a problem going 9.5. Nearly won the at 11 furlong, so that should be just fine. If this were to come off the turf too, I think that this is your top pick.
I was just gonna say that, Oldie. That's one I didn't get to look at. Is the wet, and definitely.
Yeah. So um, I went deterministic on top, and then I went to Spirit of St. Louis, who I just can't trust.
Yeah.
Um, after that fairgrounds effort that just still baffles me. Um, but best is good enough to win here. If there's enough pace, I just question whether there's enough pace here. I don't really know. I mean, even corruption, I think, has a chance to go gate to wire. The 8 horse here, and if either deterministic or corruption scratches, the other one's going to have a big pace advantage here.
Yeah, good point. That is a good point. Yeah, I was on Spirit of St. Louis Derby Day in the Turf Classic.
Yeah,
I just thought it was the quality horse in that field, but I don't know. I mean, he could win back-to-back races. I could see it.
yeah.
Um,
Well,
this
and
I just go ahead.
I just can't trust integration
No,
because he just doesn't win, and
no.
and I fell for it last time in the Turf Classic, and he just doesn't win.
So I just realized this, Oldie, and I didn't look at it. And Miguel's got 3 horses in here. I thought he just had 2. So he's got Carson's Run as well.
Run also, yeah,
Yeah. So that helps his chances of winning the race where he's got 3
yeah.
horses in it with Dylan aboard. Looking at his form, um, gosh, he's not too shabby, dude.
Yeah, I mean, did win at this distance in the Saratoga Derby, on this turf course
Yeah,
with the wet turf.
not too shabby to be
Yeah.
quite honest with you.
I
Man, this
mean,
is
usually I know the horse won at 9.5 and at
yeah,
11, but usually I'll say that Cupids I usually don't like over a mile.
yeah.
So I'm surprised it's getting that kind of distance, but yeah, no, I struggled with Farbridge or Carson's Run in my third spot. Those were my third and fourth.
Yeah, he's 8 for 11 in the money too. Dylan, this is a tough race, man.
Yeah,
I don't know.
for sure.
That'll be a fun one. I'm looking forward to this race. I hope it stays on the turf, and I hope the conditions are nice. Saturday's looking worse
Yeah,
than tomorrow, to be quite honest with you. But
yeah,
let's hope
that's
for the
what I've
best.
seen.
All
Plus the
right.
accumulation of rain from
Yeah,
Friday
overnight.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's supposed to rain overnight too. I was looking at the forecast, and same. I mean, here I don't know what the weather pattern is, but we're supposed to be off and on rain outside of Buffalo too. So the next 2 days, more rain tomorrow than Saturday, to be honest with you. So, oh, fingers crossed. Anything can
Yeah,
happen in Saratoga Springs weather.
for sure. Definitely. Um, so the Belmont, you want to kick us off with your Belmont pick here since people have already heard me argue a little bit with Alfredo here.
Yeah, so David and I talked a little bit on the show this afternoon about it. And he and I got in a similar conversation as you and Alfredo, because I was leaning sovereignty, and then I had some more conversations this afternoon with a couple other buddies on this race and the pace and the possible weather conditions. And here's the way I look at it, Oldie. For me, and you're gonna probably argue with this as well, but I think if it's a wet and even sloppy to muddy track, that I give the edge to sovereignty over journalism. If we see a fast track, or if any kind of speed is holding like it's been holding, I'm almost gonna lean away from them. As crazy as it sounds, lean away from them and look for somebody much closer to the pace or on the pace. Now, even that said, the horse I was hoping for that could, have some sort of pace and maybe take them gate to wire, knowing the way the track has run in the past last year and then what it's been running, was Rodriguez. But I question his ability to get the
Hmm.
10 furlongs, right? Plus, he's probably going to get some other pressure. Is Crudo faster than him? I don't, maybe not. I've never, paid too much attention to how quick that horse is, but he shows enough speed that he could pressure Rodriguez. And I still question whether Rodriguez can get the distance. So then where do you fall on? For me, it falls on um, Baeza. And I was not all that high on that horse in the Santa Anita Derby. Um, I was middle of the road because he was the buzz horse going into the Kentucky Derby, and then when he drew in, I'm like, oh gosh, now I got to take a second, third, fourth, fifth look at this horse, and that's the horse that I fell on when I was playing a Kentucky Derby betting challenge, and I was alive to get me to what I thought was going to be a winning number on Citizen Bull, which would have scored about 48 grand. Um, I said, okay, how am I going to get there? And stupid me, I should have landed on the two, journalism and sovereignty. But I said, I want to make it as simple as possible. And that's where I placed a win bet on Baeza and a win bet on Burnham Square. So that's where I changed my mind, and my whole perception of Baeza was that Santa Anita trip. It impressed me enough to say this horse has a chance. I was a little bit worried about the weather and such, but I looked at his wet pedigree. It was fantastic. I said, okay, this is the horse I'm going to lean on, and I leaned a little bit heavier on Baeza than I did Burnham Square. Um, so to me, that's kind of the way I've progressed through this whole knowing the
Hmm.
horses, looking at the pace, kind of doing weather prediction and stuff. I still think it's probably a two-horse race. I think everybody wants to see it as a two-horse race between sovereignty and journalism. But I think if speed holds, these two might have and there's not, even if Rodriguez and Crudo don't battle it out, who are you going to go with? Are they going to close? I don't know.
Yeah. So I just don't think there's enough pace for Sovereignty. Um, the numbers all say that that when he's closing, he's not actually speeding up. It's the horses that are slowing down. Um, I did go with Journalism on top, but I'm wavering a bit here um,
Okay.
because Journalism has gotten himself in trouble
Mm-hmm.
in the last 3 races because of the lack of tactical speed. He can't get himself out of trouble. Like trouble finds him, and that's what happens to horses that don't have tactical speed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in this race, if that were to happen again, um, one of the horses on the lead could end up winning. And for me, so I'm going Journalism on top for now, but I may change my mind depending on
Me
track
too.
conditions. For me, Crudo was the place to go. I don't think Rodriguez can get the distance
Yeah.
here, even though Rodriguez did like the Wood Memorial track at Aqueduct. I just don't think Rodriguez is that fast. And Crudo did get 8.5. This is longer. The GSR is going up 13 points. It's Pletcher and Johnny V here. Nobody's really been close to this horse in the stretch either. This horse has been able to carry on pretty easily. This is a huge step up in class. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has to explain that to me. But I think there's a possibility that Crudo clears Rodriguez here and, you know, gets an easier trip than we think. It's a Justify, and I like Justifies on sloppy tracks as well. And so I'm
True.
making the case in my head to myself that I should be putting Crudo on top. But right now, and I may change my mind. I might put a tweet out or something like that because I'm really wavering between Crudo and Journalism on top here.
Yeah, it's interesting. Um, yeah, to me, it's hard to, we're here Thursday night. We don't have no clue what the conditions are going to be, how the track's
Yeah,
playing that day, and all that stuff. So it's hard for us to, pass judgment on who we think's going to win, not knowing those types of things. So we got to kind of do it conditionally. And I'm with you. I think journalism probably is the horse to beat. Can Sovereignty beat him? Obviously, because he did beat him. Um, but right now, journalism is really tough. And to your point, he can get himself into trouble. The thing I like more about journalism over Sovereignty, and you made the point of this, Sovereignty will probably, well, he's historically been further back, right?
yep,
So he's more of a closer than journalism, and journalism is more of a stalker. He's not really a closer, although his last 2 races he was mid pack, and in the Derby he was back in the pack for a while. Um, so I think he's probably more of a stalker and will be more forwardly placed in Sovereignty. That's why I give him an edge, especially if the track's playing, more to speed and
yeah,
such. And then with a wet, if it's a sloppy track, I still favor Sovereignty over a sloppy track. But again, is he going to get a speed duel up front or enough of a speed duel up front to run into? It's going to be, for me, how I'm going to bet this race is going to all depend on how the track's running that day,
yeah,
right? And then the weather for me. And the other horse I was thinking about was Hill Road. Again, another closer, and that's the one worry I have is he is definitely a closer.
yeah.
There's no two ways about it. The Peter Pan performance was nice, but again, he's not probably gonna get the right pace set up for this, and if the track's not conducive to it, I'm definitely gonna lay off Hill Road as well.
Yeah, and I'll just say about Hill Road, that Tampa Bay Derby that he finished third in,
Mm-hmm.
Those other horses came back and ran pretty poorly.
Yeah.
Um, and I didn't think much of that Peter Pan either. For me, it, that one for sure is a no thanks.
What about
Um,
Baeza?
so
What are your
let me
thoughts?
talk about Baeza a little bit. So Baeza, first of all, had a perfect trip in the Santa Anita Derby.
Yeah, there's only
Like, could
5
not have had a
horses.
more ideal trip, and still couldn't beat journalism when journalism had a difficult trip there. Yeah, didn't have as ideal of a trip in the Kentucky Derby. Neither did journalism. Citizen Bull took out half the field. Um, and, Baeza still ended up finishing third. I thought Baeza would bounce in the Derby, did bounce in the Derby. Um, you know, I I love Pukas. You know, I was all over Dornoch last year in this race.
Mm-hmm.
I just,
Me too.
yeah, I didn't like. I'm going to say it this way. I didn't think that Baeza should have gotten into the Derby, and I thought that his connections put on a social media pressure campaign to try to get people out of the race, and
Mm-hmm.
and potentially spreading rumors about injuries to horses
Mm-hmm.
that weren't true. And I was not happy with those connections and what went on. If you wanted the horse in, there were opportunities to have run elsewhere other than Santa Anita. You could have gone to the Wood Memorial,
Yeah.
and if you finished second there, you would have had enough points to get in. They chose
Yeah.
to stay at Santa Anita. Um, I think the horse is talented. I don't think the horse has the amount of speed and the necessarily the talent at 10 furlongs that its half brothers had, let's say, in Dornoch and Mage.
Mm-hmm.
And could the speed stop and journalism and sovereignty both get themselves in trouble? And Baeza wins, of course. But for me, it was my third pick here. I think third's a pretty decent spot for Baeza here.
Yeah.
Um, and I thought, Uncaged is basically filler here.
Yeah, it's
Um,
interesting why they threw him in here, but yeah.
Heart of Honor showed nothing in the Preakness. My note just says meh. Um, so, and then I didn't like Hill Road. So I don't think Rodriguez could get the distance, but, you know, could the GSR be incorrect? Or, if we go to wet GSR, does it look a little better? Yes. So I won't reflexively throw them out, but I really think if I were to really be honest, it's those three horses.
Yeah, those are the 3 I landed on as well. But again, we're gonna see how things play out during the day, weather-wise, and how the
Yeah,
track's playing. Um, with I was thinking about Crudo and Johnny V and Pletcher. I mean, Pletcher's got what, 4 or 5 Belmont Stakes wins with. He's done it with price horses too, right?
yeah.
Um, so again, if it's speed favoring and then Rodriguez for some reason scratches, it will make interesting. I don't see Rodriguez getting the distance either. So yeah, I kind of like Crudo. And you get Bobby Flay's the owner, part owner.
I didn't even notice that. All right,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. He seems to do pretty well with the ponies.
Yeah,
It's pretty awesome. What was the horse he had that went over to oh gosh, I think it was a wine. Vino, no. Damn, I can't think of it.
Ernest and Julio Gallup.
No. Oh, that's funny. Anyway,
Um,
but yeah, it'll be interesting. Anyway, it should be a. I'm hoping it lives up to the hype with journalism
yeah,
sovereignty. But let's hope the weather holds out.
For sure. I appreciate you spending the hour and 45 minutes with us here and giving your thoughts, Mike. And
Yeah,
I hope
appreciate it.
everybody has a great tomorrow for the Acorn Day. And then tune in, everyone. We have a huge show for the Belmont. We have 2022 NHC champion David Harrison, 2021 BCBC champion Matt Miller. We have Emily Gullickson from Optics. We have Derek making his comeback to
That'd
the
be good to see
EquinEdge
Derek.
stream. It'll be good to see him. We have Scotty. We'll have at some point have Justin as well. Maybe a couple other surprise guests, and then Mike and I will be closing the show with the Belmont together. So,
Look forward
I'll
to it.
have the Gatorade IV hooked up for the
It's a
entire
long day,
show,
buddy.
as well as the catheter, of course, and we'll be ready to go. I
Yeah,
appreciate
awesome.
it.
Yeah, thank you, Oldie. It was always good to hang out with you and talk ponies and stuff. And good luck on your bets tomorrow and the weekend, and good luck on your endurance race on Saturday with the stretch run show. Man, that's a long day, buddy. You'll
And
do fine, man. You're a seasoned pro.
and as the saying goes.
That's right.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you very much.
Take care, everyone.
We'll put this on the repeating live stream so that everybody has a chance to watch it as well. Thank you.
Take care.